I'm Kate Crofts. I currently work as the lead for equity for North East Essex Alliance, and I am visually impaired. I was very fortunate with both my pregnancies because the midwife I had allocated to me was somebody who'd lived in my local area for a very long time, was well respected, and was very quickly open to listening to my fairly forthright opinions on how I wanted to conduct my pregnancy and hopefully my births. We were very lucky that she ended up back in my life for my second pregnancy and delivered me of my son at home. So I was delighted that I was able to have that continuity of care. The journey for a blind person into becoming a parent, it starts way back with potentially information about the nature of their disability and what support may or may not be required for their child if they have the same disability inherited. What information do they have? What do they need? What format would they like the information in? If it's something they can be given in a format electronically or braille or spoken to them, or do they need to actually have a tour of something? Do they need to experience a piece of equipment? Do they need to be offered the opportunity to touch and explore, or have things brought closer to them so that they may have some sight and they want to be able to see things? I hadn't had much medical care of any description because of the nature of my pretty good health before pregnancy. So there were certain environments that were just totally unfamiliar to me. And I felt, although I'd read lots of books about pregnancy, there was, some stuff that I just hadn't been practically prepared for. So I think taking yourself for a tour of an environment and being able to touch equipment and spaces, to have the opportunity to look at a birthing suite, maybe the different choices of a ward versus a private room versus a water berth, and all the different kinds of environments that you might find yourself in as a blind person is really valuable to make you feel slightly less afeared when you actually come to needing to use it in labour. It can often be that situations will change dramatically and very quickly, particularly in a hospital environment where different midwives or other healthcare providers or clinicians may be arriving on the scene, and there has to be a rapid handover. And it's still really important to get communication right and to understand that that person coming into that space may not have the background and relationship with the pregnant person that you've got, but you need to get them up to speed so that they are providing good quality care as well. I've had a hideous experience when a clinician arrived in a room, was examining me and suggesting a course of treatment was necessary, and when I tried to ask a question about the detail, they shook their head, which I was unaware of. My mum said, "It's no good shaking your head, she's blind." And this person said, "Blind people can't have cesarean sections." So that showed a total lack of understanding of who they were caring for. And although my midwives were fantastic, they obviously hadn't had time to quickly grab that individual outside in the corridor and say, "She's blind, talk to her, don't shake your head," or whatever it might be, as a very quick way of getting them up to speed. So it may be that when you're helping somebody with visual impairment birth plan, in understanding how their sight manifests what makes them more or less comfortable, they may want brighter or dimmer lighting in the room they're in. If they then need to be transferred at pace, as I was, you may need to make sure you keep the lighting controlled in some way. For example, when I was rushed into theatre, I had a spinal, so my eyes were still open, I needed my sunglasses. Luckily, my husband thought of it and threw them onto me, but the midwife hadn't. So thinking about everything you've discussed in the calmness of pre-birth planning is also something to try to hold on to for that patient in the moment when things may be suddenly becoming much more rapid and out of control. You are the person who is the calm influence who can keep that control in place. Any visually impaired person in any new environment finds it polite and helpful to have individuals introduce themselves as they come and go into your space. I've had many people in my life, both part of my pregnancy journeys and otherwise, just grab me or my child or make a statement or an assumption that is inaccurate. Just because I have a visual impairment doesn't mean my children do, doesn't mean I don't understand the genetics of my condition, but it might mean I don't know that they've got a blotchy colour when they cry. It might mean that I can't see a particular bit of lesion on their skin or some such, but I can touch them and I can care for them. And I shouldn't have it assumed that there's anything about parenting that we blind people can't do. I think the important thing in any new relationship is to have the confidence in what you do know and being willing to ask when you don't, and understanding that the individual that you're facing is an expert in them. So you've delivered many a baby before as a midwife. They probably haven't. This may be their first child, but they know who they are and they know what their preferences are for how they want to interact with someone. So being afraid of saying the wrong thing is very common in lots of interactions with people who are different to yourself, or people who have experiences or characteristics that are something you haven't experienced before. But being open and careful to just say, how should I do this, without suggesting that you're nervous or afraid, is probably the best way of finding that mutual confidence between you. And understanding that there are different ways of doing things beyond the point of birth that a blind person may want to know in preparation for parenthood. So, do they know all of the different choices they have for early feeding? And have they considered how feeding is different for a blind person to a sighted person, and which bits work how? Yes, of course, the same choices of breast versus bottle exist for all of us, but there are different pros and cons as to how you do it when you can't see. Transporting your baby. Most people in pregnancy may look to buying a sling or a buggy or whatever. There are different choices for different reasons if you're going to be using that in conjunction with a mobility aid, such as a long cane or a guide dog. And it would be a shame to spend a lot of money on something that's not actually going to be suitable for you. So again, if a midwife can signpost sources of information of that nature, that will be really helpful at the very beginning of a relationship.